joining me today. My name is Christine Marie. I am your host, and I am thrilled to have this conversation today. You know, we always take a few minutes in the green room, just really prepping how we can best serve you. And I asked Angelique Robb, who is joining us today. She is the CEO and founder of SYNKD Media. And really, the mission is to create a community that really serves and inspires the landscaping industry, both design, build, maintenance, on educating on sustainable methods. And, I really love, Angelique, what you said in terms of, I always ask folks, what's been on your heart right now? And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm thinking about AI. And then honestly, I like kind of going where the wind blows in that way. But I loved what you had to say this morning. You said that, risk has been on your mind and learning how to take risks. And yeah, you were like, I don't even know where this came from. And so I'm excited to kind of pull on this thread here, because for every single person, whether they are an owner of their business, operator in the business, employee, this is so important, because it really comes down to what is the internal state of our minds towards life. It all predicates a belief that we have about ourselves and the world, and that allows for us to live bold or not. And so, Angelique, with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. Me too. Well, Angelique, before we dive in, I would love just for you to give a better intro than I did. I love.
Oh, I thought you did a great job.
I loved learning about what you're doing on the community side, especially in landscaping. I've actually seen there's some pretty cool stuff happening in the landscaping industry, but for trades in general, there's not a ton in community, and we really need each other more than ever before. So would love to kind of hear how you found yourself here to begin with.
Oh gosh, that's a long story. Are you sure you want me to start that?
Let's go.
Okay. Well, so I started my work life as an engineer in the oil industry, ended up in Scotland, started a landscape design and build business there, and realized how interesting the industry is and how tough it is and how lonely it is as a business owner and small business. And
right.
a lot of the skills that I learned as an engineer actually really helped me as a business owner, but it was still really hard. And I still probably almost lost the company a few times, throughout the growth and, taking risks. I mean, going back to the conversation, but so really moving back to the US, I recognized that although the industry felt very professional, and I'm not saying it's not professional, so don't get me wrong, but like it's very professional, but it's very siloed. And, when a young entrepreneur or entrepreneur starts a business in the landscape industry, it's often, you start in lawn care, and then you possibly, either grow the lawn care and you get into commercial work, or you start installing patios and doing more construction, and then you get into design. There are different paths.
Right.
But it's each part of the business is so different. And it's just an interesting way that the industry here in the US has evolved, and there are all these disciplines that don't really know each other as much or communicate as much. But really, like as a business owner in Scotland, and we often would try to do the full scope, design, build, and maintain for the life of the property. But inevitably, the problems that cost me as a business owner were actually in between the disciplines. And that's where it can go wrong, or just and not on purpose. It's through a lack of awareness of what happens before you, what happens after you.
Yes.
The holistic nature of and our outdoor sites, when you start mixing living things with non-living things, the construction, and with living plants, there's a lot more opportunity. But if we're too siloed, we can't understand that. And I guess, a lot of the lessons that I learned as a business owner, you would get somebody call you, I want drainage, whatever it costs. And then, in my yard, because there's water here and I want grass. And really, learning from the flow of water, the soil composition, the gradient of the land, how much sun it got, how much wind, what was around it, all of those things made an impact on the solution. And often the solution wasn't construction only or plants only, it was somewhere in between. And a
Yes.
combination of skills. And like what I see in the States is that, erosion control is a totally separate thing. Well, actually, a landscape design and build and maintenance contractor needs to know about erosion control.
Yeah.
It's a whole separate industry.
Right.
Masonry, retaining walls. Like, you really need to know a little bit about everything, and then know when to hire the specialists and work with other specialists. The other thing
Right.
about, and so see, I could talk too much, so you're gonna have to rein me in. But
Yeah, I've got a question for you, but finish your
okay.
thought. I love where you're going with this.
So the statistics in the US are 72% of the landscape businesses in the US, which are 700,000 or more. That's the number that is right now, and I think it's probably underestimated, but 72% have 1 to 4 employees.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm so surprised to hear that. So it's primarily small, mom and pop, self.
One person, a couple of people. And then if you look at the next tranche up is like under 9 employees, you can say like 86% of the industry is under 9 employees. So what that tells me is that, and again, I've had almost 20 years of hiring subcontractors, hiring employees, firing employees. A lot of people go, I can do anything. But usually most people have a core skill. They're either good in masonry, they're good with plant design, or they're good in maintaining plants, or they're good in, you aren't good in everything. And I think that's sometimes hard to admit. You want to be good in everything, but really, if we as an industry could, like, me as a small business owner, I could recognize, well, I'm best in patios and retaining walls, let's say. Then go out and find another small business that's really good in decks and, pools and design, and that collaboration would be a lot stronger. And it would help the industry. It would help even the small business owners be more successful if we could recognize how to collaborate better.
I love this, Angelique. It's even just this past week, I met with 2 different companies. One was, I would anticipate, I don't know for sure, they were actually weed and pest control. That was the funny slip of the tongue. That's funny. So they have a parent business. They have both West. No, I'm just gonna stop. Pest and I did it again the other way. That's so funny. Pest and weed control businesses. And then the next company I met with was a roofing business. The first one, probably, I would say under 5 million. The next one, they just hit 30 million. So I'm talking with both of them. And what's interesting, I was talking to the one roofing company, and they're like, we really want to stay in our niche. When you've got roofing, obviously you could start expanding to gutters and drainage. Like, there's a lot more you could do when you're looking at roofs. But even if you just stayed isolated in your niche, there's a lot of verticals in there, like you're saying. And what I'm thinking about, even as we're having this conversation, it's so easy for us to view life in general as we're talking about this in terms of business, where it's like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I do. This is, my business. And we never look beyond that. And we don't understand how oh man, okay, if this is actually an area that I need to strengthen or just better understand, because if we think about the phases of our business, the phases of our customer journey, even, there's actually a lot to do with that as it pertains to our own lives. You know, when we're thinking about, okay, from this time of the day, I'm wearing this hat, and then I put on this hat when I come home at night. And then the next morning when I'm early with my kids, then I'm wearing this hat. And so there's multiple hats, there's multiple layers in terms of business. And so if we're really pigeonholing ourselves to not think beyond the box of this is the role that I currently play, but not actually allowing for the continuity and kind of the through lines of like, okay, if I was to step back and analyze my business, where could there be opportunity for other partners to come in, other influences, mentors, effectively just understanding in these other areas of my life that I'm not necessarily there yet, but I know that I will be at some point. And just starting to understand and kind of broaden our horizons. Because one thing, Angelique, that's so interesting to me in terms of the way that I'm thinking about this, we've got, okay, so this is my business. This is my service offering, but how much better could I really serve my audience if I had these other relationships that then I could refer people out, I could grow my business and better serve the audience, right? So looking at it from that perspective.
Well, and it's not only that, and I think again in Europe you see this a lot more. Is landscape companies are like the general contractor of everything outdoors, and whether it's a garage or an ADU or a swimming pool or a patio, the clients want one point of contact.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and they want to build a relationship with one person, not 10 different people. And so you're actually doing your client a service if you understand their needs, and if you can
So
even manage those subcontractors, or
Mhm.
other groups, other businesses under your umbrella. You're actually, I mean, just think of it in just time. Um, you know, if you're doing all this work outside and you have the pool construction company, the pergola company, and the fencing company all coming to the client, and the client's like, I have to work. I can't meet with all of you,
Yes.
like,
Right,
and
right.
it's and it's also
Mhm.
that one person's work can impact another person's work.
Yeah.
Simple things like you know you're starting construction, diggers are on site, the construction guys accidentally, because they don't know as much about planting, they mix the topsoil with the subsoil, and then we have to take it off site and buy in some soil. It affects the customer's budget. So
Mhm.
that's one impact.
That's
um,
such a good point.
and then the other side is I've had, you lay this fantastic patio, natural stone, sandstone, limestone, whatever. And the planting team, who only care about plants, and I mean this in the nicest way, they, are all about the soil and all about the plants. They then, with their boots full of soil, walk all over this really expensive paving, not even thinking that they could damage it and it could take a lot of extra cost to
Right.
clean it. And then if it's all your company, you
Mhm.
need to eat that cost. I was responsible, my teams mess something up, so that costs you as a business owner. It also costs you in reputation.
Yes.
um, and and then so there's a lot of interaction on sites with different specialists, and it
Yeah.
can go really badly really quickly.
And
And
Angelique, even as you're saying this, it reminds me, one of our clients at the time was a foundation repair business. They come in
okay,
there and they completely jack up the whole yard. And so
yeah,
one of the biggest encouragements for them was, hey, think about who comes before you, Who comes in after you? And to your point, how can you really serve to have the referral process set up, and or potentially maybe you even start your own landscaping business?
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
acquire one or partner with one
Or
that exists.
partner with one.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then you're helping, to your point, having the PM be consistent across the entire project. I love what you're saying. I really love what you're saying. And Angelique, I think that this goes for, I think that this is just so broad. So, and I think you're saying this beyond the landscaping industry, because it really is applicable to even, our family. We've got a painting business, fourth generation. And, it's okay, drywall, painting. What about custom finishing? But then what's before that? Maybe there was actually a water damage, that then
Yeah.
needed drywall. And so really thinking about it from that perspective, because us as business owners, we can either fit into the current existing customer journey, customer experience. Maybe we're actually the fourth step of what the homeowner is experiencing, or maybe we're the first step that we can then help curate the rest of the experience. And then they have even more emotional connection to us. And to that point, I'd love, Angelique, to kind of go to this point of, how did we and how can we as business owners, and again, employees just in general, have the mindset of, I'm actually going to step out of my comfort zone and start not living in my comfortable curated silo, because I know what my zone of genius is. I know how I'm spending my 9 to 5 time. But you know what? Maybe I actually do want to step out and do want to explore and learn more and take risks. And, the ability to even do that, what we're talking about here, requires a willingness to sit in the discomfort of that which we don't know, to then educate ourselves and become more knowledgeable. And as the saying goes, knowledge is power. So I would love, I asked you, what was on your heart, and you said risk. And I know that you were kind of musing on, like, where did this come from? Because the way you grew up was not at all kind
It's
of
more risk adverse, is I would say how I grew up.
Yeah.
And I think, and I told you the specific time that I've kind of come to is that I was in school in engineering at LSU, and I was interviewing for a summer job. And that was the benefits of, going to school in petroleum engineering, is that you had industry come in each summer and you would do full blown interviews like you were out of school. And the recruiter said, "Here's where we have jobs." And I was like, "I've never been to Alaska. I want to go to Alaska." And and then it was for a summer job. And then he said, "Okay, great." And then the next day or week, he called me and said, "I'm so sorry, we don't have a job in Alaska. I was mistaken. And would you like a job in Houston?" And I was like, "No, I want a job in Alaska." And he made it happen. And I remember being on the, getting on the plane going, "What am I doing? Like, why am I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to live with people that I don't know. I'm, far away from anybody I know." And it was so invigorating. I was excited and nervous, and it was a great summer. And it was really rewarding, and I learned so much. That's where I learned how to mountain bike. So I went camping for the first time, and so then I think that's kind of where it came from. And then over the years, I feel like I do take risks, and um, I do like taking risks, and I like learning.
Yeah.
I do think it's not natural for a lot of people. And I think it's really hard to do that, when you're not in the right mind frame. You're too busy, too tired, too distracted. I think, but it really can take you so far, and it really opens your mind up. And so that's really the ethos of synced is, short for synchronized, is that the idea is that we're synchronizing all of the outdoor disciplines. We're teaching each about, each other's roles, and we do that through our publication, more through our event. You feel it more at our in-person events, because
Love that.
we'll have a topic and we'll have panelists that are all from a different part of the industry on the same topic. And again, that starts to open people's minds. And I
Yes.
had a recent attendee. He started in building only outdoor pools.
Yeah.
And well, I think he actually started in maintaining pools, and then now he builds pools, but now he does all outdoor living spaces, but really outrageous designs.
Yeah.
And from our event, he said, I didn't realize maybe how landscape architects do things, and how they don't want to reach out to me until they know they can harm me, but I'd like them to reach out earlier. I'd like to brainstorm with them, even if they're
Yes.
not going to harm me. And so he actually said, I've started approaching landscape architects in a different way, and
Wow.
it's opened a lot of doors
Mm-hmm.
for my own company. And really, he just gets excited about the challenge of doing unique construction projects.
Yeah.
But and I don't think, if you'd asked him before our event if he had any problems with landscape architects, I don't think he did. But again, when you are surrounded by people in a different part of the industry, and you can have a conversation that's a topic that everybody has a viewpoint on and a different perspective, it starts to open your mind
Yes.
to different ways of working, to, and generalizations. I guess there are generalizations of, different trades, different parts of the
Right.
industry. But understanding that, um, helps you maybe get work with the right partner. Again, talking about collaborations and things like that. It's like, okay,
Right.
well, I want to build things in a different way. So who are the people that are designing that, and how can I meet them, and how can I prove to them that what I do is special and unique? And how can I serve them? How can I help them in their job? And then I will be their trusted partner when it comes to construction, and then I will get more work. It's that trust isn't built
Yeah.
overnight. It's not
Right.
built quickly. It's built by getting to know the person, and the people in the company.
There's so many things, Angelique, that you said that I just want to double click on. One that you just were speaking on, really about getting out there. It's gotten to the point where it's easy to just stay in our own echo chamber, even if that's
Yeah.
an in-person echo chamber. And it's okay. I
Yeah.
go to the office every day, 9 to 5, and then go to the grocery store and then go home. That's what I do. But
That's
going,
the path of least resistance.
yeah, yes. And to this whole conversation, being brave. And even here in the chat, I see Guy that comments, hello, my friend. He says, is it possible to be brave in not taking risks? And, I just think that there's the irony there of, and then further on, he says, in no risks, there's no reward. And so it's, yeah, like you actually can not take risks, and you're not going to see the potential reward that comes from that. It's a really a decision. That's why it comes down to kind of that inner state of the belief that we have. Viktor Frankl, this is one of my favorite quotes. He says, between stimulus and response is choice. And so we always have a choice, no matter what is happening in our lives. And here's the thing, every single choice is based in a belief. And so if our belief is, I want to grow, I actually want to evolve as an individual, as a business owner, as whatever hat you're wearing, if your goal is, and a value of yours is growth and an exciting life, there's something around growth that leads to excitement. When we're not willing to experience discomfort, we're more than likely going to continue living in the same stratosphere that we found ourselves in, the same echo chambers. But once we're willing to sit in the discomfort of entering a room where we don't know anybody, entering a room where they're talking about things we don't really know about, and just moving into new spaces where there's newness, there is going to be discomfort that there, yet there's also a much
Always.
higher uh, potential for
Reward.
return for your reward. Yeah,
Yeah.
for your investment.
Well, and, so I was in the oil industry for many years,
Mhm.
and it really, looking around me and, I worked with the older people that, I might have been in I can't remember exactly what age I was, but let's say I was 30, and I'm surrounded by people that are counting down to their retirement. And I was like, okay, I never want to
Wow.
be like that. You
Yeah.
know, sitting in the same desk for 20 years, or or being in the same position. I don't know.
Mhm.
I've seen people that don't push themselves to grow or do anything different, and it doesn't, growing can sometimes assume that you're going to a promotion and you're going to be a manager. I don't mean that, because
Mhm.
sometimes, let's say you're good with your hands, you just need a challenge in working with your hands. You don't just not doing the same exact thing all the time.
Yeah.
And I think if you become too stagnant, you just kind of shrink away, and
Mhm.
you stop living to a certain extent.
Yes. Yeah.
And I never want to not enjoy today, um, for the sake of 10 more years,
Yes.
you
Oh,
know.
man. We don't
So,
know. We don't know how much time we have. I think that that was kind of cemented in me. My brother-in-law was 26 when he was killed by a drunk driver, and it's just like you
oh,
never
jeez.
ever know. And even just, this week, 17-year-old kid. It's just like you don't want to be living in response by fear, yet
Yeah,
they are, man, just these moments in the sand of like, hey, remember, live with intention. You don't know how much time you have. Live today. Live. There's this, my favorite line in this song. I just stumbled upon this. It's a Broadway song. There's a line from this song, and it says, I want to live this one wild life. I want to rip it apart. There's something around that of like viscerally engaging with life where,
mhm,
man, okay, if I'm not doing something that's either a challenge or putting me in discomfort, even what you were saying, how to become less risk averse, what you were saying, Angelique, around travel, that alone really taught me to live outside of my comfort zone. And I can only
yeah,
imagine for you, being willing to go into a new place. Anytime we pick ourselves up out of the ordinary, out of the mundane, and put ourselves in a new environment, and that could be temporary. It could be a 2-hour networking event. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
another country. But man,
exactly.
the physical environment, when that changes and it is uncomfortable, you're forced to stretch. You are. You can either run and
Yeah,
hide, and that's a good mirror moment to be like, oh, that's so interesting that I literally was in the bathroom texting for 30 minutes or taking that phone call. You know what I mean? Like, that's weird. But we see ourselves, and when we're having that approach to ourselves and to our own growth, then we can, and we're really watching, kind of taking that third person observer perspective over the way that we show up in these new environments. Again, in person is ideal, I really, really think, but even showing up online in a new digital space,
oh
that
yeah,
that can be helpful. And then really analyzing, oh man, why was I doing that? That's,
yeah,
and usually it reflects back again because our choices that inform our responses are predicated in a belief that we hold
yeah,
about ourselves. And so if we really do, to your point, want to live in the present and live fully, that doesn't mean that we're foolish, but what it does mean is that we're willing to step outside of the bounds of the ordinary if we want to get to a next level and advance in our
yeah.
lives.
And I think another thing that holds people back is the fear of failure. And,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know, but we need a different word for failure, I think, because it's
I love it.
actually, failure is how you get to success. So it's not the polar opposite. It's part of the journey. And so but it can feel a lot worse in your head sometimes, and it can keep you from acting and doing what you really love to do, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's a shame. So if we didn't have, it should be called maybe pivoting or something, but like not, failure is essential to
Mm,
succeed. It's not the polar opposite. So,
mm.
yeah, something to ponder on.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Man on the Hat says business is a risk. Everything about it. So
Everything.
to that point, like if you are an entrepreneur, take heart. You're kind of already doing it. In
Yeah.
so many ways. And I just love. I'm thinking about my dad. So much of the reason why I love having these conversations specifically around the trades is it was kind of inspired by my dad. Watching him and then joining as a partner in the business. I just saw how when my brother and I joined, he had freedom to start entering these rooms, like physically going and joining a president's club. And I just saw him light up, Angelique. Like it was so awesome to see. Like we need connection. We need community. So yes, for the
Humans
purpose of
do.
discomfort and growth and all of that, but like also there's a real element of man, that's life-giving for so many of us is like, oh, I didn't even know I didn't have that type of oxygen in my life because I was so busy grinding.
Well, and it's lonely. It
Yeah.
is really lonely if you are a business owner of a small company
Mm,
and you don't meet other entrepreneurs. You don't
yes.
know other business owners across the country or in the same city. It's lonely. And I
Mm,
think guess that's another thing that I noticed with myself is moving to Scotland. I started a girls only mountain biking group. I started all these things to get people together. And, you know, every time I'd move, it was
yeah.
about building some kind of network.
Yeah.
And so,
So good.
this with Sync, this is the first time I'm doing it in a professional sense, but
I
I
love
have done it
it.
many times in a social sense and in a sports sense. And that, yeah, we need it, and we business owners. It's so isolating because I think that also if you're in the same city and you have competition and you think that you can't talk to your competition, but actually that was one thing that we did in Scotland is all the landscape designers and landscape design and build company owners, we would all get together, once a quarter or every other month. And there wasn't that animosity. And we weren't like, you know, competing with each other at that moment. We were talking about, you know, what what they're doing that's different. And, it really is helpful if people can get past the competition thing.
So true. That I'm so glad you brought that up. There's a humility, there's a
Yeah,
humility necessary. Angelique, I just have loved this conversation. I just was thinking kind of in summary, we touched on a couple different things. First, I just am so grateful for how you were talking about the customer journey. And frankly, if you're up for it, I'd love to have you back on just to dig deep in this because what
of
you're
course.
doing is so, so important for every single industry. But just quickly summarizing, because I'm just mindful of the time here, number one, we grow as a result of sitting in discomfort. So if we
Mhm.
really do want to expand ourselves on an individual level, we have to be willing to sit in discomfort. And then next, we're doing it for the community, being willing to go and engage with people because honestly, we were created for community in so many ways. We were created for relationship. And then third, for the customer, we can better serve by understanding the process of bookending our services. What's the 2 to 3 steps before we come in and bring our service to the customer, but then 2 to 3 steps after. And then there's countless ways. And I'd love to do a part 2 around that specifically.
Yeah,
And then,
great.
it requires courage to go into these new rooms and, to your point, humility to learn something new and also be around competitors. So
Yeah,
I
it's
love it.
worth it, everyone.
Yes, yes, I love it. Well, Angelique, I'm excited for a part 2 with you. How can people learn more about Synced Media and just be a part of what you're building?
Well, we're on all the social media channels, but the website is synked, synkd.io. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Angelique Robb, and my email address is just angelique@sync.io. We also have an event coming up in Phoenix later this year. We have lots of
Yay.
things going on. So, yeah, reach out and join in.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you. Y'all,
Great
thank
talking to
you.
you.
It was so wonderful. Honestly, it's fun. It's fun meeting strangers who become friends. I
Totally
love it.
agree. Thanks, Christine.
Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. I will see you next time, and just take some action items. Take some steps from this. There's so much good next steps to take as a result of this conversation.